I could hardly believe it. Why was Catrina calling me for an appointment? I mean, I thought she was the leading lady starring in the role of Mrs. Absolutely Perfectly Wonderful in my life, the one I thought who had it all. I'd met her at the preschool where we both dropped off our daughters. Catrina would sweep in and out of there effortlessly, always exquisitely dressed. I took careful note of each detail of her style. No makeup, but strikingly elegant. Designer coats with unusual buttons and silk scarves. Straight-edged pocketbooks that accentuated all the lines just perfectly. The only mother who dropped off her kids in heels. I had probably studied Catrina from every angle, taking in lateral, posterior, and bivertical profiles. I had a mix of emotions seeing her. I felt both inspiration and wanting to emulate her put-together style, and dread because I really didn't have the time for it. We were just acquaintances then. I knew she had an important role in the classical languages department at a prominent university, that her husband was a surgeon, and that they traveled to France each spring, where she probably shopped. She was such a class act. And they had 3 children. When I saw her, it made me think, maybe I should keep trying for a 3rd child myself, a boy this time, like she had. Maybe I did have penis envy. But what struck me most about Catrina was her hair. Mine is troublesome. It always has been. The devout Italian women who raised me used to brush and wet it down and tie it back so tightly it hurt. By afternoon, I looked as though I'd been electrified, small ringlets cut loose in a halo of reddish frizz. I preferred the way I looked in the afternoon, but I didn't think I was supposed to. My hair has long epitomized my sense of not being sure of myself, of feeling guilty for something but not knowing what, of being a stranger even to myself. Every hair seemed to be in place for Catrina. No flyaways, blonde, a real American cut that curled in the perfect even arc at the bottom. Only she could pull this off, managing to look fashionable in contrast to all the more disheveled-looking ladies around town. Now here she was, calling me for an appointment. Weird. Apparently, things had gotten stressful for her lately. She thought it would probably be a good idea to talk to someone, but she was very busy, very pressed for time. Would it be possible to pop in for an early morning appointment? Giving her a time, I felt dishonest. She apparently had no idea, when we saw each other around town, that each encounter would precipitate my going down a long list of ways I should improve myself, get a keratin hair conditioning treatment maybe, go on a shopping spree at Bloomingdale's, or better yet in Paris, where she went each spring, become another kind of woman, one I would consistently want to be. I sat in my chair, staring into space after I hung up the phone with her. There was some satisfaction in all this, actually. Wouldn't it be funny if I were to become her, Mrs. Perfectly Wonderful now, an emotionally balanced, at peace with herself psychotherapist? With all these thoughts swimming around in my head, I thought I'd better be careful. It could be pleasurable to feel superior to Mrs. Perfectly Wonderful herself. Yes, I admired her, but on the flip side, I was scoring so low on how I felt about myself when I stood next to her that it made me feel strangely negative towards her. I'd better not unwittingly act on that. I worried about being motivated to help her. Seeing her suffer could potentially help me feel so much better about my hair. The moment Catrina entered my office, her physical presence, front stage and center, threw me headlong into feelings of awe. She was wearing a silky-looking, perfectly fitted top, slim black pencil skirt and nude stiletto heels. Absolutely gorgeous. I said good morning in a neutral way and asked her right away to lie on the couch, which I never do, but it helped me feel in control and also helped me from thinking about my outfit, which just didn't feel that beautiful. "So what brings you here?" I asked. "So I've been having sort of a rough time," she said, staring directly out of the window where I'd hung a pot of geraniums. I was relieved that they were in bloom. We both looked at the geraniums for a little while, and then she started talking. In her worst moments, Catrina explained, she had always recited promises to herself that actually sounded a lot like prayers. I will take better care of myself. Be grateful every day. Exercise. Let go of petty, unimportant stuff. Invoke patience. Remember what's important. Breathe. The prayers had generally worked for her until one day a few weeks earlier. Reviewing her prayers right after she woke up, she hadn't felt uplifted. She stepped outside to breathe in some fresh air and invoke the goodness of life, raising her head to the sun, but nothing penetrated. In fact, she felt worse trying to relax, so she decided to get busy. That's when I realized that I'm depressed, Catrina said, that something in me isn't right. I have so much to be grateful for, a great husband, job, kids, house. I have no reason to feel this way, but I don't know I do. My doctor's put me on something, she continued, and it's making me exhausted. We're going to adjust that. I don't know what's wrong. Is something bothering you or upsetting you? I asked. Well, it's the stupidest stuff, totally ridiculous, like the kids. Today Jeremy wanted me to cook him pancakes. I just wanted to go into the bathroom and cry, like, why couldn't I just make him a pancake? I just felt destroyed. It's so stupid. Obviously, Catrina was none too pleased about being bowled over by a pancake. She didn't want to linger over her dismay about it at all. She found her own response intolerable. It never dawned on her to question her perfectionism. She simply saw her meltdown as a failure to be strong. She moved on to talking more about her kids. They were very spoiled. She'd always tried to be good to them, which she thought would make them centered and calm, but now it seemed like nothing was ever enough. There was no end to their demands, and they had no clue how hard she worked. She couldn't catch a break. She didn't blame her kids for being spoiled, though she had, after all, raised them to speak their minds. She said, I tell my kids I want to know your feelings, so I can't very well then say shut up every time they fuss. Catrina wanted to be consistent in the messages she gave her children. She didn't like getting upset with them. It made her feel bad and guilty if she snapped at them. In fact, most of the time, Catrina explained, she did not enjoy being with her children. It's gotten bad, she said. It's not like here and there. I mean, I don't look forward to being with them at all. Her voice was so soft as she said this, as if she were a little afraid of saying it. Do you have enough time away from the kids when you're not working? I asked. Oh, God, she scoffed. I've got 2 part-time au pairs, college kids. I don't think I could bring myself to get more help, even if it would help me. That's another story. They've got a lot going on in their own lives, which is good. I want my kids around people who are good role models, but their school schedules are so hard to take. I've got no choice. I have to be flexible. Catrina was sounding a little detached here, resigned to what felt like inadequate help, which she had talked herself into feeling positive about. She sure had a lot of understanding for everyone and a lot of patience. It was admirable, really, except that something was so wrong. I don't know, it's just such stupid stuff. I have this other stuff, meds I take because my heart starts racing sometimes like it's going to jump out of my body. And sometimes I take a painkiller and sleeping pills. It may be getting to be a problem. I'm not sure. I'm not happy about it. I'm trying to stay positive. I know I shouldn't depend on other people for my happiness, but where do you get it? Well, it doesn't sound like you've found the right balance yet, I said. Balance, Catrina said, as if it were a bad word. Oh, God, that's what my mother and sister are always saying. Well, what would happen, for example, if you started saying no to your kids or to the nannies? I explored. I don't think I really want to do that, Claudia. I don't think I have room in my life right now for that kind of drama, she responded. Drama, I thought, before saying to her, so you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you don't set limits, you run yourself ragged, but if you do set limits, you have too much drama. "That's the problem," Catrina said, taking a deep breath. "That's the problem," she repeated, which sounded a little like, "Why do you think I came here?" "There doesn't appear to be a good workable solution or option for you yet. No wonder you're feeling depressed." "Right," she said, "but I shouldn't be, she reminded me. "You don't think it's overwhelming to have to work full-time, manage help, and raise 3 kids?" "I know people that would kill to have what I have," she answered, which reminded me that I had been one of those people. "I shouldn't be this depressed," she explained. "There's no reason for it. I should be feeling great about my life." I continued in the next 10 minutes to assess whether there was anything in Catrina's life that had any give, because it sounded like she'd gotten overwhelmed by all of her duties. Could she perhaps set boundaries with the kids? Or with her husband? Or try to get more help? Apparently, nothing was possible. Nothing. A deadly silence ensued, and I could practically breathe the hopelessness that enveloped it. Finally, she rescued me from my struggle to find something else to say. "I have an appointment with my OB-GYN. Maybe it's a thyroid problem. I have to figure out how to get stronger. This is just a temporary glitch, I'm sure," she said. To my mind, the session really wasn't going well. I was filled with as much intolerance as she had for these problems. Why did she insist on boxing herself in with all this stress? Why couldn't she entertain that, practically speaking, there was a way for her to create more balance in her life? I'd have to swim around with Catrina for a while in these murky waters, where she felt stressed, trapped, unhappy, and crazed. I had to get away from being the competent, solution-finding doctor, get into her head, and enter into her psychological universe to find out what was blocking her from doing what made perfect common sense. Relax a little, enjoy life. I geared myself up to tolerate the intense state of frustration and confusion she was in, to stay with her through what she was feeling instead of trying to control it in any way, which is when everything between us changed. The enjoyable fantasy in which she was Mrs. Perfectly Wonderful and I was a project for improvement fell away. We were in a new zone now, the zone of reality, the zone where we are all perfectly wonderful and simultaneously all projects for improvement. This is the zone where we do not shy away from the truth of suffering. So that's how it came to pass that I stashed away all my advice for finding balance and shelved any other ideas for what might be a viable solution to her overstressed predicament. I put all practical common sense out of my mind, including entertaining the most obvious confrontation that her perfectionism and superego were on complete and total overdrive. Here were my prayers. I will not control these energies by talking sense. I will keep tolerating how crazy she is and keep helping her to talk about it until something happens. Catrina, I said, tell me more about the people in your life. And so the real analysis began. I said very little to Catrina during the next few weeks and asked her a lot of questions about the kids, the nannies, her family. This is what I said to myself: tolerate the feelings, sit with them. This mantra is what helps me do my job to keep people talking. This is what I did say to Catrina. That's not easy. A few times just to let her know I was on the same page with her, and now and again I'd say, that's a challenge. Sometimes, as she told me how overwhelmed and depressed she felt, I'd say, that's the right feeling to have, which it was. No feeling is ever wrong, it's simply there. After the 6th session, Catrina looked back at me from the door with a sad smile. She said, this is helping, actually. I guess it's good to vent. I thought it was interesting that my having no answers or advice for Catrina didn't frustrate her. She didn't seem at all annoyed with me that I wasn't fixing things. Maybe she was relieved that I wasn't going to push her to do something like everybody else did, and that I would take the time instead to listen. People are too quick sometimes to come up with a clear path, a practical alternative that appears from the outside to provide the perfect solution to getting in a more comfortable place. But to the crazed person, either the better place is not more comfortable, or getting there can't happen. Catrina felt guilty for feeling so crazed. She didn't feel entitled to being miserable. It made her feel weak and guilty. Telling her it was okay to just talk about what was going on, and that it would lead to something eventually, was all she needed for now. I continued to be tempted to provide solutions that would relieve Catrina's suffering, but when you can accept, get comfortable, and feel at peace with the nature of a seemingly hopeless situation, when you can listen to how terrible it is and bear the suffering, eventually something will give. I have faith in that, even though you never know quite when exactly something will give. My simply listening to Catrina was proceeding nicely. I learned that a lot of things were upsetting her. She told me that some nights she fell into bed without even brushing her teeth. She had lost her sex drive, felt no joy around the kids, wondered if the beauty of her children's early years was going to be completely wasted on her. She had sex with her husband once every month or less, but it was very hard to relax and rev up. Sometimes it was just uncomfortable. Some of the upsetting things in her life were long-standing and familiar. Her husband didn't care if they celebrated their anniversary. Her mother seemed to care more about Catrina getting a promotion than about any of her daughter's feelings. As our sessions progressed into the summer, it started to get hot out, and one day Catrina came into her session in a very heated state. "My mother and sister are both telling me to say no to the au pairs taking vacations again," she said, "because I didn't make it to my nephew's second birthday on Saturday, like he would remember that I wasn't there. He's 2. I had to run errands I couldn't run on Wednesday because that au pair couldn't work again that day, so now my family's mad at me. Can you imagine? Where were they when I needed them on Wednesday?" Catrina had clearly been a little edgy in her conversations with her mother and sister, and I was glad about that for her. We all need people we can be edgy with when we're crazed. This is one of the best reasons to stay married, to have someone other than yourself to be edgy with. Catrina's relationship with her husband didn't allow her to be that way with him, so her sister and mother were the ones she permitted herself to get aggravated with. "They act like I'm stupid," Catrina continued. "They say I'm too insecure, and that's why I don't tell my nannies to do more. Can you imagine? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. It just makes me so mad. You know why they're trying to put me down? Because they feel insecure. I'd love to see them work as hard as I do. I don't sit around waiting for things to happen. I make them happen. I make things happen. I'd like to see my sister and my mother do even 1/10 of what I do." "You work very hard," I corroborated. "I'm not afraid to work," she continued. "They say I should ask for more. I'm not a passive person like that, whining my way through life. They say the same thing about my husband, that I should ask him to do more. Are they kidding me? Do they really think Jack is going to come into the kitchen out of his study if he's working on a paper to wash dishes? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. They don't even realize how important he is, honestly. They act as if I'm stupid. Can you imagine? They're just telling me, say no. They've no idea how crazy it would make me to start a fight in the house with Jack or the sitter. I've 3 kids to take care of, and now I'm going to start squabbling with my husband over doing chores. It's beyond ridiculous. I don't have time for that. I have bigger fish to fry, and so does Jack. Do they think that he got to be where he is because he came home and had squabbles with his wife over nothing? Takes 10 minutes to do the dishes. That's not the kind of stupid house I want to have. I, unlike them, have a nice, productive home. Do you want to know what would happen if I started making waves and lost my nanny, Claudia? Would you like to know?" "I know," I said, understanding that Catrina couldn't say no to her nannies or ask for help from her husband. Catrina's indignation was growing by the second. This was totally new, seeing Catrina so angry. This was not the same woman I'd been getting to know, who'd been so depressed, who'd felt so weak and disappointed. This Catrina before me now was filled with righteous indignation. Her family failed to see what was so evident to me now. She wasn't stressed, depressed, and overwhelmed. She was unrecognized for being so important. How could Catrina's family not understand or see how well she kept her life together? Why was it that all they could see were the things she was doing wrong? There was no comfort in this family. Nobody who understood her or knew her. Only people putting her down. No one was ever there to urge her on, to tell her, "You're so great." All they communicated was, "You're missing out on life. You do too much." Catrina went on, "You know, if I did what my mother and sister said and started creating waves with Jack and the nannies and pushing back on the kids and creating all that drama, and I started a revolution in my house, Gaston would pounce on it." "Who is Gaston?" I asked. "Oh, Gaston is my colleague at the French department. I guess you could say he's my nemesis, my competitor. I probably haven't mentioned him because that's the one thing in my life that's not upsetting me, sort of. But anyhow, he's just waiting for the opportunity to see me stumble. Being a mother, having this job, just waiting for it. And I am never going to give him that satisfaction." This was the first I'd ever heard of Gaston, because Catrina had only talked about her problems. Funny how people can go to a therapist, talk about their most private problems, totally overlooking what can turn out to be the most important details of their lives. Now we were getting to the real stuff. This, by the way, is why it's so good to have patients like Catrina, who are content to just lie on the couch and talk, rather than imagine you're going to solve their problems within a 6 or 12 or 24-week timeline with specific goals. Things come out when you talk only for the sake of talking, details that might not seem important, but which really are, and I had just hit the jackpot. "Why is Gaston out to get you?" I asked. "Oh, Lord, we've been competing for research money, awards, nominations, for years. He's something else, that one." As she talked about Gaston, Catrina had tremendous energy in her voice. "He wants to chair this meeting and steer the research in his own direction, and if that happens, I swear I am going to blow a gasket." This was such a new side to Catrina. "He's done it before. I know how he pushes himself into what I'm working on, and since he's done it before, he is going to do it again. We were competing for a small $200,000 project, and I was supposed to be the primary researcher. This was a couple of years ago. Gaston got some theorists from Paris involved in the project, and of course, they won it. I'm working under him on that. I cannot let that happen again. I have to get my name on more papers, or he's going to continue to put me under himself again and again. We do the work, he takes the credit." After a quiet minute, Catrina returned to the original problem. "I still can't believe that my sister would call me insecure. Do you get it?" "No, I don't," I said, and I meant it. After this last animated detour about Gaston, I had seen the side of Catrina that bespoke power, hence the jackpot. This woman, contrary to what I had thought previously, was not someone meek who didn't like to face confrontations or set boundaries or say no. Actually, she was someone who didn't want to deal with family problems because she imagined that she had much bigger fish to fry. Don't my mother and sister realize that I can't afford to get into skirmishes with my nannies or get caught up in all of these other stupid problems? Have they ever offered to come over and babysit if I had to work or maybe drive the kids somewhere? I mean, my sister doesn't work. Am I supposed to attend a stupid baby party? Does the baby care? You know what I just realized? She's insecure. She's talking about herself. My problem is I'm overwhelmed, not insecure. Catrina took a deep breath here. This plot was seriously thickening. "Why does your sister put you down so much?" I asked. "Because she hates me, that's why. Because I have it all and she doesn't. She's jealous. I'm the smart one. Our mother, never had a career. She just took care of us, me and my sister, and she always wanted us to be big successes, and I'm the one that did it, not my sister. I don't limit myself. Never have. I believe there are no limits to what I can do, and I live by that every day. And now they hate me for it. That's why they keep telling me, do less, do less. Of course my sister wants me to do less. Then I wouldn't be the success that she is not. And in fact, I'll tell you something. The better I do, the more she puts me down, the more she keeps telling me, do less. Like hell. She wants me to be vulnerable. She wants me to have the kind of stupid drama in my life that she has with her husband and her kids. They argue all the time. Where does it get them? They're probably the reason why I'm so depressed. Yes, I said, not so much because I was agreeing with her, but more because I was finally getting a sense of what was going on in her head. Now I finally understood. Here was the reason that Catrina could not integrate more balance in her life. She didn't want it. Balance, in her mind, meant having to admit she needed help. It meant being weak. Getting balance in her mind was like having to admit defeat. So Catrina had pride. She wanted to feel invincible. That would be her way to get revenge on her sister and mother for treating her with so little respect. Maybe, if she got to feel more important, they would realize it and regret putting her down. Catrina was angry at herself for not having the energy she needed to expedite this plan, win over Gaston, gain importance in the family. But her frustrations with herself only fueled her desire to be even more self-reliant. Catrina derived a lot of pleasure and strength from being better, doing more, appearing to be strong. She wasn't going to give that up for balance. The only problem was, did she have the strength for it? Well, if Catrina needed to feel important and strong, to keep fighting and competing in her department, to find the strength to keep things running without lumps or bumps at home, I would certainly not make the same mistake her mother and sister were making by telling her she was doing things wrong. I would not suggest a better way. I would not doubt or challenge her need to feel important and take everything on. I would never tell her she was trying too hard to be perfect. Doing that would alienate her from me. She needed to feel important and strong, the way she felt at work, but not at home. And if that's what she wanted, that is what I would help her with. Of course, helping Catrina get stronger and do more, reasonably speaking, may not have been the optimal solution. Trying to do everything to be perfect and fighting inner demons that take the form of mean mothers and sisters isn't really healthy. But when we get overwhelmed, the path of good sense and reason is not always a road that can be taken. The path that was possible in this case was the one I was taking, the one that didn't set me in opposition to Catrina, but that would help her do more of what she wanted, be better, more important, stronger. My goal was to align myself as an emotional ally, to establish my standing as a soulmate and trusted confidant. It's always good to become welcome in a person's mental house. That's how you gain the footing that you need to help the person, eventually, to change. As I entered into Catrina's personal universe and stayed by her side, I asked questions like, "Have you thought about whether you're on the right vitamin?" She said, "I hadn't thought of that. Maybe I do need to look at that. That's a good idea." I was on the right track. I thought of something else. What about getting regular massages to release some of the tension so you can take more on? She really liked these ideas. This was the kind of support she was lacking, the kind of respect she didn't get from her family, who just wanted her to find balance by doing less and saying no to people more. We spent weeks talking about different things she could do to get stronger so that she could manage things as competently and seamlessly as she needed to, moving ahead on every front and keeping her house calm, assessing what was working, what she needed to pay more attention to. I said things to her like, "You just feel too alone," which was true. It comforted her. She felt understood. I wasn't criticizing her way of doing things. I started to genuinely believe that with enough support, strengthening, and coping strategies, Catrina would be able to get on top of this crisis and resume her usual high level of functioning. I soon forgot that I had even ever wanted her to find balance originally. I was really getting into supporting her. It's fun becoming a cheerleader and a soulmate when you find the right path to walk alongside someone who's challenged emotionally. This is my favorite part of my job, joining my patients on the path they want to be on, walking alongside them. When this happens, we can't wait to be together. It's so fulfilling, so comforting. Everybody thrives. It's exciting to imagine where we're going to go to next. I had fully entered into Catrina's universe and was now sharing completely in her vision of how to be in the world. Fight to be strong. Do not create drama. Remind yourself that you are important. At this point in the treatment, Catrina felt truly heard. One day, Catrina came in through the door and didn't make eye contact. Once on the couch, it took her a while to start talking, which was unusual. Something heavy was on her mind. "I don't know," she started. I don't know." And then she grew silent. "What's up?" I asked. I don't know," she said again, slowly. I could see that she was in some kind of zone. This is not uncommon for patients who lie on the couch when they're in therapy. People don't get into these spaced-out zones as often when they're sitting up and facing their therapists. On the couch, people space out much more easily, which lets them wander into parts of their minds they probably would not be able to venture into or stumble upon with a more directed conversation. We've come a long way since Freud, but for me, using the couch is still fantastic. I waited. "Why is all this stuff so important to me? Why do I need to keep everything together so much?" she asked. "What thoughts are you having?" I answered. I was surprised that she would ever question herself. "I don't know. I'm in that place again where like nothing matters. Sometimes I just wonder what it's all for. Is becoming the head of the department what I really want? I don't know if it's what I want. I don't know if I even care if anybody thinks I'm losing ground at work," Catrina said. Being strong and important wasn't working for her today. This was strange. I felt a little disappointed, actually. We'd been having so much fun with the strengthening project. "I didn't sleep a lot last night," she said. "Tomorrow will be better. I'm in that dark place again. It's okay. I know what this is. I know it's normal. You help me with that. I'm just feeling a little weak. I don't have energy today. I wish sometimes that, I don't know, that I didn't have to spend each day fighting so hard to keep things together. I wish I could relax a little more sometimes." "Well, it's hard to sustain that feeling with little sleep," I said to Catrina, and then I added, "You can't feel invincible every day. Nobody can. Even the most important person in the world feels this way, I'm sure." This was becoming therapeutic for me. You see, I had no problem being sub-perfect and unimportant. Those feelings could throb within me as loud and strong as the bells pealing in St. Peter's Square in Rome, and they were so familiar and intrinsic to my experience that I could still move on from them and get on with my day. Would Catrina ever reach a point where she could be happy on the days that she lacked the feeling of importance? My hair insecurities were really not that bad compared to what Catrina's insecurities did to her. I was hoping that Catrina would start to question her foundation of needing to be strong and important. I wish she could have a revelation, or that I could give her an interpretation like, "You've never felt truly loved just for being yourself. You can only feel worthy if you do everything." Or here was another interpretation, "Screw feeling important and competent. Forget what anyone else thinks of you. You need balance." These walls of competency Catrina needed to erect everywhere to feel strong were so exaggerated. It seemed she had to prove herself every single blessed second of the day. It was like she needed a feeling of extreme importance on steroids. But I didn't say anything, because it would have come from a place in me of wanting her to get rid of the foundation she rested her life on. That foundation was that she could manage everything alone and not make waves. But I could see that Catrina's need to feel important was breaking down. It wasn't working for her all that well anymore. Still, this dissatisfaction wasn't yet enough for her to decide to loosen her defenses even more. In fact, after a good night's sleep, she was back to full-throttle importance, as defended as ever. That's how the next week began, and Catrina's doubts about being so competent had all but disappeared. Things had quickly settled back into their usual patterns. That small feeling, "Why do I have to do all this?" was gone. She had renewed strength to tackle the challenges of a new day, keeping things in order. She had gotten swept up in the pleasure of achievement again. But not me. Seeing her so depressed and depleted reminded me that her way of life was pretty crazed. My supporting her way of manufacturing feelings of competence and worth was starting to feel like a strain. I was no longer enjoying helping her to do everything. This was a good omen. Whenever I grow tired of supporting an old foundation, it's always a sign that the patient is also not benefiting from it quite enough, that its use has been outlived. I was having less fun in the sessions. I could feel a change. The question now was how and when that change would manifest. It was on a day that Catrina came in looking bouncy and energized that I found a new wrinkle to her story. Almost as soon as she was on the couch, she started talking about one of her children, Jeremy, the Pancake Boy. He really was fussy and becoming more upset on several fronts. It felt to me like the boy was begging her to slow down and pay attention to his feelings. His insistence on being served pancakes for breakfast every morning seemed a little too intense. There must have been something behind it, a feeling that he couldn't articulate except through this yearning for a big-deal meal. What if you don't cook the pancakes for him? What if you told him he's not to fuss and he can't always get what he wants? I asked, exploring Catrina's thoughts despite my nagging pity for the child. "Oh, meltdown," she said. "I'd rather get up earlier and cook him the stupid pancakes. If he misses that bus because of a meltdown on Tuesdays, I'm screwed." "You're going to get up earlier?" I said. "What else can I do?" she answered. "Sounds like you're going to have to get up earlier," I relented. "Yeah," Catrina said, and grew silent. "What's wrong?" I said after a few minutes had gone by. "I'm just so tired," she replied, and all the energy had gone out of her voice. "I'll bet you'd rather stay in bed," I said. "Yeah," she said, "I'm not sure I can do this." The next thing I knew, she was crying. I'd never seen her cry before. I didn't even notice it until she grabbed a tissue. This was very unexpected. "Sometimes all I think about is staying in bed," Catrina confessed. "Well, what would happen if you stayed in bed for once?" I asked her softly. "Are you not allowed to catch a break? Would it be so terrible?" Gently, I pushed against the walls of competency. "Could you allow yourself to feel tired and weak for an hour or two?" Catrina took a deep breath and held it. For a long time, I was thinking, "Breathe!" Finally, she let it out. "You know," she said, "if I didn't get out of bed one day, I think I'd never get up." There was a long pause here. "I think I'd say no to everything. I'd say no to life, to the kids, job, my husband. I'd stay in bed. I'd never get up again. I wouldn't get up. God, shit." Catrina started crying hard at this point, quiet, uncontrollable sobbing. "I think sometimes," she continued, "I just want to die. Jesus Christ." I listened, the lump in my throat growing. The crack in her foundation of competency was becoming dangerous. She was experiencing a lot of pain. It was as if meandering along her purposeful, important life, we had come to a huge clearing overlooking a great valley, and there she was, staring into the abyss. I could feel how scared she was. I said very matter-of-factly, I don't know anybody who hasn't faced these feelings at some point in their lives, had moments when they wonder if life is worth living, of wanting to die. It's normal. Really? Catrina said, breathing hard. It's horrible. I can't stand it. Well, we all come to the feeling in our own time, I said. I myself had faced this desolate abyss for the first time when I was just 16, which is what had led me to my own analysis. I remembered how, when I first started treatment, I couldn't stop crying. Session after session, I cried from beginning to end. It's so amazing when we arrive at these deep, dark places to experience the power of having someone by our side who's not daunted, who can say, it's only a feeling. It is so good to be with someone who is strong and unafraid, who seems convinced that it's okay, that we are exactly where we ought to be. If Catrina could know these feelings and stop pushing them away, perhaps she could design a life that wasn't driven by a fear of them. Speaking your fears, if and when it comes your time to see them, to someone who's not afraid to be with you when you meet them, strips them of their power to destroy. We were making progress, Catrina and I. I thought I understood the case. Catrina was fighting against deep feelings of emptiness and the secret thought that nothing mattered. Her entire foundation of competency had, perhaps, been erected to counter the swelling tide of feeling that she didn't want to live. But the desire to give in to those feelings was catching up with her, and her way of coping with the feelings was growing old. When we outgrow familiar ways of operating in the world, we become unhappy. We need to replace old foundations of belief and behavior with new ones. But before we can do that, the old foundations have to come down. We don't always know if we want our old foundations to come down. Sometimes we get caught in this in-between place of dissatisfaction and discomfort, neither here nor there, as far as doing something different or staying the way we are. Autumn had arrived, and the leaves were falling. For Catrina, it was a time of hunkering down. The university where she worked had opened its gates, and she had put together her fall wardrobe in preparation. She seemed less undone. Her despair had quieted, and she was steadying herself for the onslaught of responsibility which was energizing her. Catrina was less upset by her own impatience with her children and the nannies. Our conversations had helped her to accept the feelings more. And after all, we had noticed some new places in her mind that she hadn't even known were there. I'm not sure why one morning I asked her this particular question, but it was dawning on me how alone Catrina was, living in a world where people couldn't be trusted to say the right thing, do the right thing, or provide her with much help. I asked her, how would it be if anyone other than me ever found out how vulnerable you can get? Oh, trust me, I've had plenty of people who would love to see me be vulnerable in my own family. Trust me. I know that people would just love to see me with a little mud on my face. I've known that for a long time, since grade school, trust me. What was it with this trust me? She had said it 4 times. I learned a long time ago not to trust anybody, she added. I realized that Catrina got excitement from her mission of competency, in part because she felt like she lived in a dangerous world, sort of like a war zone. She was fighting for respect and feelings of importance, which, when she could get them, felt like a win, something she had conquered. For her, this feeling was probably as good as the feeling of being loved. Admiration is a powerful drug. You know, she explained, not to sound vain, but when you're attractive, forgive my sounding arrogant, things are not that easy for you. People aren't that nice to you. They either envy you or want to kill you because they think you have everything, or they don't want to be friends with you. And I'm not afraid of that. Women can have whatever feelings they want about me. When I was a kid, I was beautiful, and I swear people discriminated against me. They tell you beauty's an advantage. Well, it is and it isn't. People want to knock you down. They don't think you get scared or feel vulnerable. They think that they can be mean because they don't pity you ever. There's no compassion. No one cares about you. I decided a long time ago, screw it. I was going to be the best I could, and if people were going to keep me at arm's length, that was their problem. I didn't care anymore if I intimidated anyone, or if they were jealous or envious. If people were going to be aloof and distant with me and try to put me down, that's what they were going to get from me. Well, no wonder I'd felt inferior in Catrina's presence. My feelings of inferiority, it was turning out, had not only originated from my own hair insecurities, they were also coming from her. She needed, expected, and perhaps wanted people to feel inferior to her so she could feel stronger. It was too bad that the good feelings it gave her came at so high a cost. Ironically, gaining strength was depleting her. I could now see how the competency foundation had gotten built. It was fun and felt good to keep people at a distance and compete with them. It would have made it so much easier on me from the beginning if I had known that being in awe of and insecure near Catrina was practically a requirement of being exposed to her. It's a good thing I didn't mind feeling insecure, or I would not have been able to treat this competitive woman. My willingness to feel insecure fit perfectly with her need to feel important. The sessions were becoming progressively more therapeutic for me. Catrina's analysis really was helping me to feel better about my hair. We were, I realized, an excellent match. This new twist, Catrina's need to outcompete people, filled out the picture. This was the reason for her emptiness, and it explained why people did not sustain her or bring her happiness. She was aggressive, scared, and fighting for her life. I had to respect that her exhausting tactics came from her strong life drive. I guess you could say she was fighting, struggling to feel alive. The respect I had mustered for her extreme need for competency was real now. I saw now how Catrina was built to feel like a winner. She just needed a new way to get there. Summer had come around once again. Since the winter, Catrina had completely stopped taking anti-anxiety and depression meds. When you can speak your story, it no longer scares you. It no longer felt overwhelming that sometimes she didn't want to live, or that she lived in a competitive world, wanting to outdo people to get some good feelings about herself. It was all natural, normal, acceptable. She came into one of the early summer sessions wearing a beautiful pink dress with a gorgeous yellow scarf and black patent leather shoes. The dress was so form-fitting it made her legs look even longer. I was thinking how much I loved the subtle pink when she said, "There's a couple of things that I should, probably could, start saying no to." I was thinking, if the au pair doesn't like it, she can leave. I can interview other people. If Jack doesn't like that he might have to do a morning drop-off at the school, I'm going to have to put my foot down. I don't care. And then she laughed. Perhaps she was delighted or surprised by how out of character this all was. Wow, was this balance? This was unexpected. She went on, suddenly serious. You know, if Claire wants to take that morning yoga class and I can't go into those morning meetings, I think I could make some phone calls and make some headway on how to write that proposal. I bet I could outsmart Gaston. The department can live without me for a few mornings. No one's going to die. Well, I was very glad to hear that. I was very, very glad to hear that no one was going to die.